I'm a god.
Well, what if there is no tomorrow?
I'm a god.
There wasn't one today.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of It's Time to Rewind, a podcast stuck in its own time loop right along with the movies we discuss. In this season, we're taking a look at Groundhog Day after day after day after day. I'm your host, Bubba Wheat from Flights, Tights, and Movie Nights, and in this episode, we are discussing Phil's 11th Groundhog Day that starts at 55 minutes and 35 seconds, with Phil rushing through the previously romantic building of a snowman, and ends at 56 minutes and 27 seconds, with Phil getting slapped. My guest, once again, for the last time in this movie, is Sean from Next Best Scene. Or
Next Scene Podcast.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me back. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you back.
I haven't done this since I was a kid.
Feels like it's you ever get a sense of deja vu, like we've already done this podcast before.
Didn't you just say that?
I think I may have.
Yeah, so this is a fun little bit. We're out in the snow. We're building a snowman. We're tossing the old snowballs around. And Phil is being really creepy.
That's to put it mildly. And I won't go through it again, but I jumped ahead in my own notes where I feel like this is really what I talked about with him, like playing the video game, and you know, he's gone through it so many times that he's messing up on an earlier stage, and this is him just completely messing up, doing it the way that he thought it's supposed to work, but he's just getting everything wrong because he's too focused on the next level. He's too focused on getting Rita into the bedroom and closing the deal that he is completely forgetting about the real letting things happen naturally.
Yeah, I think this is, Yoda might have some advice for Phil at this point, because he's looking ahead, he's looking somewhere else. His mind is not in the present, and it's not where his mind isn't on the moment. And I think part of it may be the kind of the spontaneity of the first time through this sort of section of the day, or the section of the date with Rita, where we saw him at the bar. He could kind of build it line by line. It's like, okay, day one, oh, this is what she orders. Day two, this is the toast she makes or what she drinks to. And you can kind of build, kind of lay out the script line by line. And then they're outside, they're building the snowman, and suddenly kids are throwing snowballs, and he kind of reacts spontaneously, and it happened to work out. But because it all unrolled and happened so quickly, he wasn't able to map it out in his head and write the script, so that when he comes back and tries to recreate the moment, he doesn't know exactly what to do. He doesn't know exactly how to make it feel right. What happened because it was spontaneous, or what kind of felt right because it was unplanned, is now all shot to heck, because he's trying to force it, trying to script it and make everything work out the same way.
Yeah, because, we saw so much that he had the repetition of all his previous lines down exactly. So he would be saying the exact same thing in the exact same way. But whenever you're dealing with this almost like chaos theory, where things can't, like he can't roll the snowman in exactly the same way. He can't pick up the exact same chunk of snow and throw the snowball in the exact same way. And I think because of that, it's even, he's not even saying the lines right.
The lines. I mean, what what he's saying is just, it's awful. Like, I want to, I want to have kids. I want to adopt. I want to have foster kids. Like, yeah, he's just kind of throwing lines out there. And I guess it kind of goes back when I was talking about, like, when you learn the piano, like, to play something really fast, you can't, it's not you're thinking fast. It's you have to practice. So sort of it becomes, becomes a habit. It becomes ingrained. The kind of the muscle memory's there, where like he's trying to riff off like this fast thing, these fast repartee with these kids, and just it's not there. Like he hasn't rehearsed it enough. And, he isn't cool enough or nice enough to say the right thing naturally, and he hasn't rehearsed it enough to say these lines. So what he does say, just it's weird, and like Rita picks up on it, like, okay, you're being weird, Phil. It's disturbing.
We get in the slap number 2 of several, but today we just see the first one. Well, the second one. An argument could be made that the slap actually takes place in a different day, but I think it makes sense that it's still this day, because we already see him going downhill, and it's not too far of a stretch that it's going to end in a slap. Maybe not immediately, but he's definitely heading his way towards a slap in this day.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff, and we can try to read into it and try to interpret what does this mean in terms of the loops and the days and everything, because where they're building the snowman and where they're the snowball fight, that's sort of downtown area, like that's by Gobbler's Knob in kind of the Central Park, and I think it's either right in front of or right around the corner from her hotel where Rita's staying. So it's natural that at the end of this part that he would walk her back to her room, because it seems like, all right, this is, the date's over. This is not going well. But when we get to the slap, they're standing in front of the inn where Phil is staying. So, that could just mean that despite the awkwardness with the snowball fight, he still managed to get her as far as the front of the inn, but he couldn't quite get her up to his room, and that's where she slaps him. Or does that indicate that this is a different day?
I think we already covered a lot of, that this is really the start of Phil's downward spiral that I think really started whenever he told Rita that he loved her, and then admitted that he hated himself.
Mm-hmm.
And her reaction to that, I think, really started the wheels turning on this downward spiral. And, it just gets worse from here. But this is really the start of it. And I think it started, really, the impetus was yesterday's day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that may be something that Phil kind of never gave voice to, saying that, I don't even like yourself or like myself. And it's there are a lot of things that like you kind of know it's true or you feel it's true, but saying it out loud kind of, you have like that breakthrough, that kind of aha moment, or, that things change once you kind of give voice to it and you put it out there, that things change. So I agree with you there.
It's like step one of the Alcoholics Anonymous is admitting that you have a problem.
Admitting you have a problem. But then the line that she says when she slaps him on that day, when she says, "That's for making me care about you." So like she actually says, it's not just that, oh, she had a good day or she enjoyed dinner or whatever, or she enjoyed his company. Like she's actually saying, I care about you. Like that's a big thing to say. Oh, wow, I actually got this person to care about me, and now I'm messing it all up. Like it's not just one more thing that separates Rita from sort of like the one night stands that he had with the women around town. That he could get her, that it is possible, because it's one thing, like if you can't do something and you're like, well, that's just impossible. So it's like, so it's no big deal that I can't do it.
Again, like Battletoads.
Yeah. Again, like Battletoads, where it's like, well, no, I know it's possible. I know that I can get her, or I can, the way he would say it is, I know I can make her care for me. So when I don't do it, when I fail, it makes it that much, hurts that much more. It stings that much more, because I know I could have done it. And one day I actually did it, and now I can't do it again.
Right.
So it just kind of makes it worse, to make him like himself even less. And like you said, yeah, it's a downward spiral.
we both agree that he spent more than just the 5 days that we see on this date. And you had said that you felt like he had spent about 2.5, 3 years in Groundhog Day before he started this date. So what would you say that he's up to at this point? Like how many days do you think that he spent on this entire date to this point?
Let me see. So we're guessing we were like 10, 12 for the bar, just to like,
yeah,
just to get just to drink to world peace. That was like a dozen. He's got to get her through the sweet shop with the fudge and the white chocolate. Then he's got to get her to dinner. And then we're going to build a snowman and then a snowball fight. And I'm going to screw that up. I got to learn this French. I got to learn French all of a sudden. Another thing we didn't talk about from the last loop is when she's trying to leave and he's trying to keep her there. He's like, "Oh, I've got some French poetry here." So presumably, if she takes him up on it, he can actually read. Now he may not know, he may not know French to the point where he can translate it on the fly between French and English, but he's probably worked on his pronunciation so that he could read French. This may be like 4 or 5 months, kind of depending on, his facility for languages and how far down that kind of French rabbit hole he's gone. I mean, though there are some things that he's still learning, like, okay, fudge, no white chocolate, the Rocky Road stuff. But it's got to be at least a couple months, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm a little bit once again, like on the shorter side of things, because I feel like Phil is really, right now he's still in shortcut mode where he's doing, like, he's good at planning, but he's also doing the bare minimum, where I think that, he found the Baudelaire poetry book, but I think that he's just relying on what little he knows of French, that he thinks that he can just wing it. Or either that, or, he knows that at this point Rita has never taken him up on it. He's not going to bother to learn it unless she actually does take him up on it, and he thinks that would actually be the kicker. Just having it there as a visual prop. So I think I would give him just about 1 month. So
okay.
So that puts my running total at about 185 days to this point.
Yeah. We all agree he has not learned French at this point. He knows one song, he knows like one stanza to one song, and maybe he can read some French, maybe he can read some Baudelaire, like he can pronounce it somewhat correctly, but he's not a fluent French speaker.
Yeah, I give him just like a couple days to memorize. Well, I give him a couple days just because he has to find the song.
Yeah. And,
I think he can memorize it in a day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that, Mrs. Lancaster, and my one disappointment in terms of I had a great time with these episodes and these loops. I mean, my one regret is I didn't get any Mrs. Lancaster time. My presumption is that she's got there's a record player somewhere in the, there's sort of a music room or a conservatory in the inn there, and she's got a record collection, and there's a little Jacques Brel somewhere in there that he found. He found it in the inn. But yeah, he listened to this one French record. But
and I have shared your guys' theory about Miss Lancaster is the one controlling the time loop.
Keep an eye on her. There's something fishy there. I don't know if I have all the proof to connect all the dots, but there's more to that woman than meets the eye. Mark my words.
And I know you've kind of danced around it and avoided it a lot, but what would you say, like, if you had to put a number on how long Phil has spent in the entirety of the Groundhog Day movie, what would it be?
I do go long. I know. I know. Some of the estimates I shortcut. Like, I don't think he learns French. I think he learns the words to one song. And, in terms of piano, he learns to play a couple songs. Like some of the calculations that some of the folks done, that you can find online where people, go back to that, 10,000 hours to master something, and they kind of figure that out. I don't know if he's mastered much. Now is he really starting from zero? Maybe he took piano lessons in school. Maybe he took, French in high school. So he's not starting from zero. I go to something Ramus said, and he was later in his life, he got into Buddhism, and in sort of the Buddhist philosophy, 10,000 years is a segment of time that comes up a lot. Sort of there's a toast, may the emperor reign for 10,000 years and that kind of thing. And there's an idea, there's the ages of Buddhism. There's a kind of the final, they have their outlook on time is cyclical. And there's the first stage of discovery of discovering the Buddha's teaching, and the disciples kind of spread out in the land. And then there's, sort of an age of enlightenment where, the teaching of the Buddha has been spread around the land. And then there's sort of a degenerate age, or sort of a time of disorder where the teachings get lost. And that final stage is 10,000 years before, the cycle repeats and there's a rebirth. So I kind of like that idea of 10,000 years. I do think it's got to be a very long time, that there are some things. I mean, even if he only learns to do one ice sculpture, because we only see him doing one, but doing an ice sculpture with a chainsaw has got to take a massive amount of time. And that final day, like, he's got everything timed down to like the exact second. He's, especially when it comes to catching the boy falling out of the tree, like, just everything's so exact that I'm thinking, like, that's got to take a lot of repetition and a lot of repeats. And he goes through a lot of different things. So, I don't know if it's an exact number or a literal number, but yeah, I kind of like to think of it sort of 10,000 years. Yeah, which is a lot of days.
Yeah, that's a whole lot of days. It's one of those numbers where it's hard to even wrap your head around. Mm-hmm. That's why the things that I've read, the one that I always gravitated to, which I don't remember, because it was a while ago whenever I read it, so I don't remember if it was Danny Rubin or Harold Ramis in an earlier interview, but I like the concept that one of them had, that he felt like what he had to learn in his own Groundhog Day is something that he needed a lifetime to learn. So I felt like he spent basically one standard lifetime in Groundhog Day. So 60 to 90 years.
And that's a long time. And let me just put out my calculator. I mean, so yeah, 80 years is something like 29,000 days. That's a lot of days, particularly to spend in one place. And we're talking about, like, how long do you think this particular loop was, kind of planning this day for, with Rita. So even if it was only a month, even if it was only 30 times around, kind of doing the same thing, going through the same motions, in trying to repeat everything the same way, 30 days in a row, that's a lot. So I think it's certainly in the thousands. So yeah, 80 years would be somewhere around 30,000 days. I mean, that's enough time where you can you're in denial. You think this is just play. Then you get depressed and you have the dark period. And then you come out of that. You're torn down and you rebuild. And then you reach enlightenment at the end. That seems reasonable. Sure. I could go with that.
And, out of those thousands of days, we only actually see 36 of them. And one other thing that I've been asking everybody is, what is a day that Phil must have had that we don't get to see in the movie that you would have liked to have seen?
That I would have liked to have seen. Because I know there's certainly a lot of days that we don't see that probably wouldn't necessarily be interesting. Like, how many days did he not even get out of bed? How many days is from, the whole loop from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. is he literally just laying in bed all day? There's got to be a few hundred of those, you think? I wonder. I kind of want to go back to like the dating scene of what happened. Again, I think it was Danny Rubin who said that we're supposed to get the idea that he seduced every eligible woman between 18 and 80. So there's probably a wide range. I know like I looked old very young. Like my hairline started receding junior year in high school. So I don't know if we know exactly how old Phil Connors is supposed to be. I mean, he could probably play anywhere from, I don't know, anywhere between like maybe 32 and 45. But so going back to like, I'm bringing this up because like the game he plays with Nancy of like trying to pretend they were went to school together and he had a crush on her. So maybe there's like a 10 or 15 year age range if he kind of pushes it that he could play that with. But then, someone who's currently in college, someone who's 21 or 20, like he can't pretend they were in school together. But does he, like, is that his thing? So like, does he then pretend, oh, I was your high school teacher and I always thought you were the prettiest one in class, like, and make her believe that she had a schoolgirl crush on him and now it's okay because they're not in school together anymore? Or like, and then for the older women going the other end, does he then pretend, oh, I was in your class and you were always my favorite teacher? Like, I wonder if the school thing, if like that's his go-to, and then he just kind of changes the approach based on what generation the woman's in. So I kind of would want him see to kind of play how he plays it. That his seduction technique, if he can't pretend they were schoolmates together. I wonder what he does then.
Yeah, that kind of touches upon one of the ones that I had in my head where, he goes and starts to try and seduce, like, let's say Miss Lancaster. Mm-hmm. And then he just gets a few minutes into it and then he just like thinks better of it and he's like, no, I'm not even doing this, and then just walks away. But, it's been a real pleasure to have you on this in these past several loops.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. This is it's a great movie. I'm always ready. I love watching it. I always love talking about it, and it's a great podcast. So enjoying listening to it.
All right, and why don't you go ahead and remind everybody where they can find you online for the last time here on this show?
For the last time, well, I have sort of my home base, my main site that links to Next Scene Podcast, links to Groundhog Minute and the Spinal Tap Minute and all the other things that I talked about. I also link to my guest appearances. So if you're listening to this, there'll be a link to that, and you're like, how did I get here? There'll be links to that. There'll be links to my other guest appearances, and that's at catandsean.org, and it's CAT like the animal, and Sean SEAN, catandsean.org. And if you missed any of the links or any of the plugs from the earlier episodes, if you go to catandsean.org, that links to all my podcast stuff. So check that out.
And as always, I am Bubba Wheat, and you can find me at flightstitesandmovienights.com, where I have written reviews of superhero and comic book movies. And you can find this podcast, It's Time to Rewind, on Anchor.fm and anywhere else that you can listen to podcasts. And, in honor of the snowman, which, even though he didn't have a top hat, and the fact that today is my birthday, I'm going to end with Happy Birthday!
Happy birthday.
I'm a god. Well, what if there is no tomorrow? I'm a god. There wasn't one today. Hey! Hey! Ow! Ow! Are any of you up for adoption?